Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of You Make It Happen, and I cannot wait for today's episode. I am so excited, you guys. I have a guest on today, and she is from Southern California. She has done a lot of her work. As I've talked about in previous episodes, can we ever really be done with our work? It's kind of a lifetime process. And Leslie is a firm believer in the lifelong learning experience and a growth mindset, and it's one of the things that we completely agree about. I was fortunate enough to get to go to San Diego and record in person with her, and this is the result of that. It's a conversation about earned secure attachment, as well as relationships and love and life, travel, food, and the pursuit of happiness. And by pursuit, I mean earning your happiness. Stay tuned. Hey, thank you for being here, Leslie. Welcome. And can you tell us a little bit about your trauma recovery background, your anxious attachment recovery? I know the listeners can see in the show notes about your bio, but just a little bit about how you got to where you're at today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And
also just a little bit about your background and what you do for a living, just to enlighten our listeners.
I'm a third grade teacher. I've been a teacher for 24 years. I got married very young to, you hear the phrase, you married your father, or you marry the person that has usually the most negative influence on you.
Yep, I hear that.
I did. I married my father, who disapproved of me being a girl and choosing a career over staying home, and grew up in a very rural environment in the Midwest, and so ended up marrying someone similar, and was married a long time and raised 2 kids, and after 23 years was diagnosed with breast cancer, and that's what inspired me, or finally gave me the strength to plan to leave the marriage. And although I had wanted to for many, many years, didn't know who I was, and so I started to hide little bits of money. I left in the middle of after my surgery and my chemotherapy. I left right in the middle of my breast cancer, and started my life and opened up credit cards in my own name for the first time, and rented an apartment for the first time in my own name, and raised my kids to be independent, and basically started that life. And then I did a year of dating a lot, so many men, and I was on the website Plenty of Fish, and wow, there was a lot of fish.
Yep, I've been there. There's a lot of fish.
A lot of
fish to throw back.
Yes, a lot of. But I was enjoying the fish at the time because I needed.
There's some fun fish. I'm not gonna lie. There's some fun fish.
And so I did a good year of catch and release, and then met someone. I would say I fell in love for the first time in my life, because I don't really believe I was in love with my kid's father.
Yeah.
And was with that person for 4.5 years. And while I felt like I was in love, the other person my ex-boyfriend was not, was too afraid to move in together. And, I believe that he was in love with me, but now I realize, and now I know that he was avoidantly attached.
And were you securely attached at the time, or what did that look like?
So I was not securely attached at all. I was, reflecting back, I was needy and clingy, and the more that he pushed me away, the more that a securely attached person would say, okay, let me know when you're ready, or this is what I want, and move on.
Right.
And instead I became more clingy and more needy and more anxious.
I don't know what that's like at all. That's sarcasm for y'all who can't tell. I know exactly what that's like because I spent years being severely anxiously attached. Severely.
Yes, we definitely have that in common.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, as just so many of us, and thinking we need to pull these relationships towards us, and then other people who are typically avoidant push us away, and then you do this back and forth dance, push and pull dance that feels like a rubber band, and it's not healthy.
I feel like sometimes people, especially people that are anxiously attached, forget that they're also insecurely attached. Like, it's a different form of insecure attachment, and it means that you're not emotionally ready for a relationship.
Right.
Which, I always thought was the opposite, because anxious, like, are more expressive, and, like, you seem like they're described as clingy and needy sometimes, but they're also described as more emotionally expressive and more emotionally open and available. And that's just not true. Like, they're still insecurely attached if you're still anxiously attached, because even though you may be desperate or really wanting a relationship or that connection, you'll take it with anybody. And that's the problem, is you'll take the first person that gives you that love or affection or says you're worthy or, is that connection for you. Is, you'll take what you can get. And I was definitely no exception to that. Like, whoever I was sleeping with at the time was probably the one that I was attached to if I was regularly sleeping with somebody.
Right.
Like, and I became attached to them, like, oh, you'll do. You find me worthy of love. Like, this is acceptable now. And it's really just another form of emotional unavailability.
And it is, because who are we attracted to as anxiously attached people? We're attracted to avoidant people. And same with avoidant people are typically attracted to anxiously attached. Because we know in an unconscious level that they're not available. And we know that they're going to push away. So hence we pull.
Right. It's that subconscious level of, like, knowing. And that's another thing that I think a lot of anxious attachers don't necessarily know. It's on a subconscious level. So how would you say because now you identify as earned secure attachment, how would you say you got there? I mean, I know that by default that's a lot of hard work. But can you describe for our listeners, like, what your journey or path was like, and, like, more specifically how you got from being severely anxiously attached to earned secure?
Yeah, I would say many different modes of healing, meaning I did seek out a therapist, but the therapist that I was seeing wasn't very aware of attachment styles at the time.
That seems like it'd be kind of a problem, like a hurdle.
I think now I would probably have not gone to that therapist in the future, but at the time I wasn't aware enough. But I did my own research, and at first Brianna McWilliam, all of her videos helped so much. Please, listeners, go and research her videos. And she helped me recognize that I was anxiously attached and that I was attracted to an avoidantly attached person, and that he wasn't necessarily, the boyfriend at the time, not interested or not wanting to move in, that it was really more about fear. And that the fear...
His fear, not your fear. Is that right?
Yes. Okay. His fear was greater than his love for me, even though his love and the Brianna or somebody had shown me a chart or a formula that your love for somebody minus the fear you have in the relationship equals your connection to that person. Your healthy.
I remember that, the partnership equation. I really liked that, and it showed, like, the almost a mathematical formula. Like, yes. the partnership is equal to the love the person has for you on a scale of 1 to 10. Subtract the scale of the fear the person has for you, also on a scale of 1 to 10. Like, let's say that person loved you at a 10, which I think your ex probably did, loved you at a 10, and their fear was at a 9, and that ultimately gives them a score of 1, making them a shitty partner. Does that sound right?
Yeah, and I think that final score is really what helped me realize that this was not going to work, because I kept saying to myself, this person is in love with me.
Yeah.
We can make it work. Love
conquers all.
Yes, love heals everything.
All.
It doesn't. Listeners, it doesn't.
It doesn't. Can you, I know you said it a few times. Can we just say that again? Love does not conquer all.
Oh my goodness. You have to be able to have a partnership, and it has to be able to work. And sometimes that's bad timing, and sometimes that's a level of commitment, and sometimes that's fear, or all of the above.
Yeah.
So it was an awareness that he did love me and also had an enormous fear, and that it just was not going to work. So then I met my now husband, and continue the therapy, and continue to read books and watch videos. One of the books that helped me was the book called Hold Me Tight by Sue Johnson. And she actually trains therapists on attachment styles, and I was able to kind of branch off into a different therapist who was trained by the Sue Johnson method.
Ooh, I like the sound of that
helped
one.
a lot. And when I met my husband, he was secure, earned secure, because he had a lot of therapy himself. And at first in the dating world, he seemed a bit boring to me, even though he himself is not boring.
Right.
But our
he was
relationship,
boring as a potential partner. Like, you didn't feel that chemistry, that spark, that, ooh, this could be the one, the butterflies, which is all bullshit for your central nervous system, is reacting to usually the opposite attachment system.
Yes, right. And the way that showed up for me is he was not making me work really, really hard for his attention. And so that was weird and uncomfortable. And I think other people might have ran and said that there was no quote-unquote chemistry. But
well, you
I
would
didn't.
Probably have run in the past.
Yeah, I probably had run.
If you had met him when you were still severely anxiously attached, do you think that would have worked out?
No, I think no. We both had to put in a lot of work. And
there you go.
so I think it was, again, we talk about that timing. The timing had to be right. And the chemistry developed. I mean, please don't hear me, listeners, that, I'm just settling for somebody who's not, that we don't have chemistry. We do.
No, of course.
But it developed over time, and God, the mad respect that I have for him for being secure.
Oh, yeah.
Himself.
I mean, how sexy is that when you have a partner who's not only done work on themselves, but earned the secure attachment and can communicate their feelings and support you and tell you how they're going to... I mean, that's fucking attractive.
Oh,
that's sexy.
Oh, yeah. And just to give you an example of how amazing it is, I get told on a regular basis, Leslie, I so appreciate that you listened to me when I was talking about this problem. Leslie, I'm so thankful for having the kind of person that I have in my life. I mean, how awesome is that?
That's
that
amazing.
Not only is that cool for him to say, but that I'm able to, kind of not think, ooh, that's, he's pushing himself on here, whatever, we're both at a good place. And
no less than you deserve, especially for all the hard work that you've done. I think the universe or God or whatever you want to call it, gives you the gift. Once you've done the hard work on yourself, then here's a securely attached potential partner. Like, you can reject that person, or you can say, yeah, I'm ready for this. And I'm ready to put in the hard work of a committed relationship, which is a lot of work.
Right.
You see people in a committed
Absolutely.
relationship that's functioning, that's a lot of work, a lot of communication.
Yes, and also please don't, please know that he's not perfect, and I do see his flaws. And my husband is never on time, man. Never on time,
but not a deal breaker.
Not a deal breaker, and a quality person.
Yeah.
So,
so it sounds like you were describing a little bit before that getting breast cancer was maybe the catalyst that started your journey for you. Is that what you would say would started it, or was there more to it than that?
It was definitely the catalyst. Being diagnosed with breast cancer, so it's been 9 years ago. Immediately, a visceral reaction of, I do not want to die and leave my children with their father.
Okay.
100% of the time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can't
leave them.
Solve that by divorcing. And anyway, I immediately thought, I am not going to leave them with somebody who doesn't really pay attention to them. And so, so it gave me the strength to get through chemotherapy and to leave, and take those kids. And what I really wanted was to send a strong message to my children that this behavior and this kind of relationship is not okay. And they were 15. My son was 15 and my daughter was 11 at the time. And I hear a lot of people say, well, we're not in a healthy relationship, but at least we're together. We have a family unit. And maybe when they...
Oh, no.
Hear a lot, maybe when they graduate from high school. No, you need to model for them what a healthy relationship is now, as soon as possible. And if that's together and you're healthy and happy, great. But if you have to be single and healthy and model what it is to be happy, then do that.
Absolutely. So it sounds like your anxious attachment journey was some therapy. What else would you say was involved in that?
I had a couple of good friends that were going through a similar relationship, and I was ahead of this friend in the journey, and I felt like I could help her. And ultimately that friendship didn't last or didn't continue because she didn't grow, and she is still in that unhealthy relationship, and she's the one that ended it. I think it was hard for her to see me. She ended the friendship when when my husband proposed to me. That was kind of her end.
Wow. So it sounds like she was so insecure in herself that she couldn't handle your secure attachment continuing to grow. Is that about right?
I think so. The way that she had ended the friendship was so abrupt right after the proposal, and I had just bought a house, and I think all of those things combined, and she was still stuck, I guess that's fair to say, in the same place, and I think that was just too hard. And I think it's important, while it was really sad for me, just to recognize that that's where she was in her life.
Gotcha.
And not take it personally.
Yeah, I can understand that. I've taken a lot of shit personally, especially in my 20s and 30s, that I've learned now that, the way people treat you is a reflection of their personal shit, their insecurities, their judgment, their shame. Because we don't judge people in areas that we don't feel shame. There's just no judgment on an area that you don't feel shame in yourself. And if that's something that you disagree with, let's take a good hard look in the mirror and or talk to a good therapist and see if you disagree with that after doing some work.
Right.
So in the beginning, what would you say was the most influential in helping apart from therapy? Like, was there a written work or an author in particular, movies, music, podcasts, exercise? Like, what would you say helped the most aside from therapy, which is obviously the number one?
I think probably both videos and books. I would say Brene Brown, which is where I met you in a Brene Brown book club. And
I know, shocking, isn't it? Brene, I've never mentioned her before. She's like in every episode I mention. I love Brene Brown.
Maybe one day you can get her on as a guest.
Oh gosh, that would just be ultimate celebrity status. Yes, please.
But, which helped our friendship develop, our love of Brene Brown. And Glennon Doyle with her book Untamed was a huge help.
Oh, that's a good one.
And, again, Sue Johnson and her work with the book called Hold Me Tight. Okay. The book Attached, which is a little bit more, it's just a different perspective on attachment styles. Brianna McWilliams' work.
When you say her work, are we talking about Reels, or is that YouTube, or where can we find her work?
YouTube, yes.
YouTube, okay.
Yes.
All right, I can put a link in the show notes as well. I just wanted the listeners to have a reference.
And I think that would cover it.
Okay. And is there anything that you recommend now that you're like, everybody should read this book, or everybody should watch this video, or this is the one thing that I think everybody should know about?
One thing that's, if you are not familiar with Brene Brown, and maybe you've referenced this several times, but I'll just piggyback on it. If you're not familiar with Brene, watch her Courage video on Netflix. And then after that, she has a special on, is it HBO Max?
Yeah, it's HBO.
Where she talks about the definitions of emotions. And while that sounds boring, it's not.
It's not at all.
So I think it's a really good dictionary because, in order to understand other people, you really have to understand yourself and your own emotions. And that's really difficult sometimes, especially if those emotions, you've been taught to push those down and not feel those.
Yeah. Sometimes we don't even know what we're feeling, especially people like me with ADD. Like, sometimes it takes me minutes, and sometimes it takes me hours. And sometimes it takes me days to identify, especially bigger, stronger emotions. Like, I just know I'm upset. I know that I'm dysregulated. I know something is wrong. I know I need to, regulate myself. I know I need to sit with discomfort, or I know I need to, start figuring out what's going on or why. But oftentimes it takes me a while to get to what am I feeling, and the regulation of the nervous system, I think, is, first step, which I do talk about in a future episode, or past episode by the time this airs. I don't know. I don't know what order this is going to be in. Let's face it. Fly by the seat of their pants. No, I'm just kidding. Sometimes I do that. But what is one of the best pieces of advice you've ever been given in your path of healing from going to anxious to earn secure attachment?
It's weirdly towards the end of my experience with my therapist, the first therapist, we had developed such a good relationship after 5 years. And we had had couples therapy as well. So she knew my ex-boyfriend, and she gave me a gift. And she gave me a gift of a wine glass with this glittery, bejeweled things on it. And she said, Leslie, make sure that you're treated like a princess, because everybody deserves to be treated like a princess. And, I have that wine glass sitting on my bookshelf, and means it's a good reminder for me that, I'm not typically a blingy kind of person, but just that we all deserve to be treated well.
Yeah, I like that. You deserve to be treated like you matter, like you're the most important person to that other person.
Right.
All right, I know you get asked this a lot by your friends and acquaintances and people that you meet alike, How did you find somebody who's securely attached to date and eventually marry?
Yes, I do get asked. For people who have met my husband, they say, "Wow, how did you, find such a great guy?" And well, first of all, he's not perfect, as I said.
Nobody's perfect. That's just an illusion.
Yes, but he does treat me well, and I think it's because I treat him well. I treat him with respect, and I treat him with I don't know how to say this, in a very communicative way, which is not always easy for me. So, for example, one of the times we almost never fight, but the one time that he got upset with me, it was because I was really annoyed with him because he wasn't coming in for dinner. And I got annoyed, and it was about the third time. And that third time, I'm not a yeller, but I got really quiet and, kind of was making dinner in a not very nice way and, snipping
passive?
around.
Are we talking
probably
passive-aggressive?
passive
Okay.
aggressive
I gotcha.
and not really being friendly or communicative, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he pulled me aside and, secure way. He said, "Hey, let's talk in the bedroom." And he said, I told him why I was upset, and he apologized. He gets really focused on his projects, and then he said, "But Leslie, why didn't you tell me the first time that happened? How much it bothered you?"
Oh, he called you out. Mm-hmm. Oh, You're like, "Hey, why didn't you do something secure?"
Right. And so it really makes me reflect, because that first time I didn't understand how much it bothered me. Yeah. But the fact that he was asking me, "Please tell me when you feel something strongly like that the first time so that I can change it." And that's a matter of respecting each other with gratitude. Oh, on a side note, I want to say another couple that absolutely influenced me is John Gottman and his wife, Andrea?
Julie Gottman.
Julie, thank you. Julie Gottman.
Yeah, they're from Washington.
Oh my gosh, they're amazing. And the research that they've done about the 20% of your comments only a maximum of 20% of your comments to your partner can be negative. For the vast majority, 80% statistically, need to be positive comments with gratitude and fairness and friendly and respectful comments. Yeah. 5 to 1 is kind of how I always think about it.
So we talk about Bid for Connection, and I love their work. The Love Connection, I think, is one of their newest works that I just read, and it was really good.
I have the 7 Dates. That was good, and they do a really good job with their podcasts as well. So everybody check that out. Check John Gottman and Julie Gottman.
Yeah, I'll have to listen. I haven't listened to their podcast, but I've read several of their books, and I think The Love Prescription is one of their better work. Maybe that's their most popular work. I can't remember. One of them is super popular, and it was excellent. And it's definitely applicable to relationships, but it's applicable if you're interested in a relationship too, and or if you're interested in going from any insecure attachment style to a secure attachment style.
Right. So. Because if you're not in a committed relationship, you need to be in a committed relationship with yourself and be the best version. And I know that that's something that I talked about in the past is how do you be your best version of yourself in the dating world while not being fake? It's such a fine line. Like, you want to be your best self, but you want to be your authentic self as well.
Yeah. So how do you do that? I mean, you were dating for a while, and I mean, now you're married in a secure, healthy, committed relationship. But how did you show up authentically while you were dating, whether you're securely attached or not? How did you make the effort to show up authentically? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I think it depends on which date you're on in the numbers. So your first date is so surface level for the most part. So you're really just light conversation. And then, your second and third date, you're just really getting to know what the person likes to do. Do they tip? Are they kind to how do they treat other people who are, in a restaurant or, in the bowling alley? Do they, do they let the other person take the ball? You're just observing their kindness. And then as you get to, your fourth, fifth, sixth date, are you, paying attention? Are you revealing your pieces of yourself that are not fabulous, but
right.
While not dumping your entire life story and closet ghosts in your closet kind of thing,
right?
So I think timing, again, I would say the timing is important when you're dating, is revealing your authentic self while not oversharing. And believe me, oh my goodness, I spent the first part of my dating life oversharing, I think.
Oh yeah, same. I that must be an anxiously attached trait, because I would overshare constantly. I think it is. I think I've actually read, it is. I've read and seen videos that it's like a bid for connection. You're trying to get closer to that person by sharing like traumatic stories or personal details that you really shouldn't be sharing. Like, they haven't earned the right to hear your story yet, right? Because that's just not information that that's appropriate to reveal that early on, in that early dating stage, like first, second date, third, even a couple months in. Like, you haven't earned the right to hear my childhood trauma just yet. That's too soon. Like, you have to earn the right to hear somebody's story. And depending on, how casual the story is, if this is for public consumption, would I tell it to everybody? Will I publish it on a podcast? And then maybe I'll tell it to anybody.
Right.
But, if it's not for public consumption, then they have to earn the right to hear it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I made lots of mistakes in the beginning.
Yeah. And I actually had a question from a listener about secure attachment and dating as it relates to sex, and I'll give my opinion on this, and then I'll ask for your opinion as well. How long should you wait, especially as a female, as a woman, to have sex if you're trying to get to a secure attachment, or you're in the midst of doing the work or whatever, or should you wait? And, my answer is it all depends. Like, it depends on who you are as a person. How important is sex to you? For me, sex is an important part of a relationship. I gauge the feeling and the energy, and I have to test that person out. I'm like, I'm not going to commit, I'm not going to waste time with somebody, and I'm not going to waste weeks or months or get super into somebody and then find out that that's not going to cut it, or we don't have any sexual chemistry, or this isn't a good fit in other ways. And so for me, I think relatively early on, between first and third, fourth, fifth date, I mean, depending on, the other person's chemistry and their energy as well. But if they're like, wanting to wait 3 months, I'm not here for it. And if they're wanting to wait more than probably 4 dates, I'm also probably not here for it. But it's very personal preference. Like, and if you have religious preferences or other preferences, and you want to wait, then that's, your personal call. But I don't think there's anything wrong with being a human being and having needs, female, male, non-binary, or otherwise, asexual, whatever. Asexual obviously wouldn't have the needs, but, like if you're a human being, if you have sexual needs, that there's nothing to be ashamed of. Like, there can be some stigma about hooking up on the first date, and I'm like, I don't really care. Like, maybe that's what happens, and maybe I never see that guy again, and maybe I don't give a shit, and maybe that's what I needed in that moment. Like, I had needs, and maybe like I have a first date and I don't want to sleep with this guy because I'm not ready yet, and I want to get to know him a little bit better, or maybe I like him a lot and I want to try him out right away. I don't know. It all depends on the feel that I have for it. But I'm curious your thoughts.
I agree. I would just add that I think when you say yourself, I agree. I think you want to know what your goal is for this for a relationship. If you know you're just out of a long marriage and you haven't experienced life and your goal is just to have fun, then go and do that. And if it feels like you're having a fun night and you are being safe, then just go with that. I had a lot of fun on, the first night of a date in the beginning. And then my goals changed after I had experienced that. I wanted more of a connection in a relationship. And I think if that's your goal, to have a connection with somebody, to have a long-term relationship, I think it's worth it to wait a bit to have sex, because then it becomes about the sex instead of getting to know each other. And so, I still think, if you had to pin me down in the timeline, I still agree with you that, 4, 5, 6 dates is probably enough time for me to get to know a person, to know whether I'd want to have sex with them.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to have. But I would everybody think about your own goals. And if your goal is you want to be, married and still a virgin, or you want to still be a virgin and on your wedding night, then that's a different scenario. But if you're out, you're young and in your 20s and you want to have fun, then go do that. Yeah. And don't feel guilty about it.
Yeah, have a good time. We all have needs. We're all human beings. Like, you do you. Mm-hmm. And I think my best piece of advice from another podcaster I actually got from dating advice was, like, don't get attached to the outcome. Like, yes, I like this guy, and yeah, I'd love to see him again, and I'll tell him, because I'm securely attached now, like, hey, I'd love to see you again, and I don't expect to see him again. Like, if I end up meeting somebody that that I click with and have a good time with, and then I'm like, hey, I had a really great time, I'd love to spend time with you again, and then, like, I'm not going to get my hopes up, I'm not going to worry about if I'm going to see him again or not. If he wants to see me, then we'll make it happen, so to speak. And if not, then there's a million other people out there, or a billion or so other people out there who are potentially compatible. So
yeah, and I would just add that I think for me, that would be a reason to hold off on the sex a little bit longer, because I know that if the sex was good, I would feel more of an emotional connection to that person, and that would be an artificial connection, not necessarily, if you feel like the sex was really good, I don't know that I can separate that really well and think, maybe. So waiting.
That's a good point, because, when I was much more anxiously attached, I would easily get attached through sex, and I don't now, and so I don't worry about it as much now. Right. So yeah, that's a really good point. I like that. All right. I know you and I could talk forever, but I'm going to wrap up the show here with our quick quiz question round. Okay. And they're mostly personal, but I do have some random questions in here just for funsies and travel related. What piece of art, movie, show, or creative work was incredibly influential for you, and why? And this can be anything. It doesn't have to be related to trauma healing, but absolutely anything. I know you talked about Hold Me Tight already, but
yeah. I would say the show Ted Lasso was so influential to my life. And it was influential to my dating life, because Ricardo became a fan of Ted Lasso just as much as I did, and it really glued us together. People say a TV show, but if you watch it, it's all about hope, and it's positive, and
it's about hope and mental health struggles, and like being a human being and what that's like, and
growth mindset.
Right, growth mindset. You and I have talked about the fact that off the podcast that we don't trust somebody who doesn't like that show, who's watched it. If they haven't watched it, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt, right? But if you've seen this show and you don't like it, I don't know about your mental health. That says
something about you, right?
I think it says a lot about their mental health, and a lot about their security and their insecurities. Anyway.
So everybody go watch Ted
Everybody
Lasso.
go watch Ted Lasso. This is not a paid advertisement. Okay, number 2, what do you do to decompress?
Well, I'm a big reader. I host a book club. I actually host bunko night with a bunch of ladies. I host board game night with a bunch of ladies as well. And that's really fun. My husband and I go bike riding, pulling weeds. Pulling weeds is really stress reducing too. So
It absolutely is. Yeah, I like it. Okay, the last self-improvement or trauma healing book you read and highly recommend. Or really any major recommendation that you have for our listeners.
it's been a while, so I would say probably one of those, Untamed by Glennon Doyle probably was the last one. It's been a few years, but yeah.
What movie or book are you currently recommend to anybody that will listen?
The book it's a fiction book, but sure. It's called The Measure, and it's great conversation. Has some moral decisions, and it's so if you want to read something and have a really great discussion about it, it's called The Measure, and the author is Nikki Ehrlich.
Okay.
So
yeah, it looks good. And related to travel, what is at the top of your travel bucket list / wish list?
Well, I was really lucky to go on my honeymoon this summer, and my husband and I both went to Europe for the first time. So we got this little bug now, and now we want to go back and go to Italy, because we didn't get to go to Italy. So that's definitely on our bucket list.
And what's the best travel story you've ever heard? Doesn't have to be your own.
I've just been, I'm trying to think of another person's travel story, and okay. I've just been very lucky in my life to know people who live around the country, not as much internationally, but I have family in Maine, so I've been able to travel there. I've been able to travel to, go visit you in Washington and go visit, I grew up in Oklahoma, so family there. So I guess I've been able to see the United States in large part. I've been really lucky.
That's really cool. And what is the most useful travel purchase or item you would say?
Well, if you're going on a cruise, you need to buy hooks. The walls are made out of metal, and so everything can be, when you bring the little hooks, everything can be on the hooks, and you can keep everything off the countertops. And also an adapter. My goodness, if you go in European, you need a good adapter, because those. Oh, and England does not have the same adapter outlets as the rest of Europe, no, which I discovered.
They don't have the same money. They don't have the same adapters. They don't have the same anything. So England likes to be different.
Yeah. That was something big aha for us.
I like it. Okay. All right. And the foodie in me needs to know, what's for dinner tonight?
Goodness, I think that tonight's dinner is going to be a really good pizza from Surfrider Pizza in La Mesa.
Ooh, that sounds good. Is that in San Diego?
Yes, it is in San Diego, and they're a local spot, and they have really good homemade pizzas. I love it.
And what 4 songs would you best describe who you are to somebody who doesn't know you?
I'm pretty much an open book. So first of all, anything by Pink. I'm a huge fan. I've seen Pink 4 times in concert. There's a song by Shakira called Try Everything. I think it's on a Madagascar soundtrack. I play that song for my students all the time.
I like the theme there. Try Everything. Good one.
The soundtrack to Encanto. Okay. Absolutely.
That'll get stuck in your head.
Love the soundtrack to Encanto. And then the movie Inside Out. is one of my favorites as well.
Oh yeah, I like that. I think I referenced that either in the bonus episode or in episode 1. I can't remember. I referenced that in one of them. All right, last but not least, what advice would you give for someone struggling with not being able to find a therapist?
I think there are a lot of therapists out there that are qualified, but just because you're qualified doesn't mean that they fit you. So I think you need to look at it like you're finding a romantic partner and keep, I don't mean go to the therapist once and say, oh, I didn't like this person and switch over. It takes longer than that to see. So if I were to say, I would try them a good 3 times. And if it's not a good fit for some reason, then try another one. My goodness. Try one that doesn't let you get away with the easy stuff, that pushes you.
Oh, I like that. Can you say more about that?
Zone. I think if you have a therapist that lets you ramble on and complain about your day and not ask you pointed questions about why you're having a bad day and what you could do to fix that bad day or fix your life. Or on the other end, if you have somebody who gives you unwanted advice and you're clearly not ready to hear that, that's not a good fit either. So you need to find a good therapist that can ask you the right questions to make you reflect and make you feel like you came up with that.
Yes, I think that's the key to a good fit for a therapist. I mean, we just need a good enough therapist. We don't need a perfect one, just a good enough therapist.
Right, absolutely.
Okay, well, that is excellent. I really appreciate you being here and taking the time today, and I hope to have you on again in the future.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Any questions for our guest Leslie today can be directed to the podcast, and you can reach me at missy.traveler on TikTok, Missy the Traveler on Instagram, and you can reach the podcast directly at You Make It Happen Podcast on Facebook. Please follow on Spotify in order to get the latest episodes, downloads, and bonus episodes, and hopefully I'll have subscriber content for y'all shortly, which will mean bonus subscriber exclusive content. I cannot wait to be able to offer that to you guys. And in order for that to happen, I just need you to share the podcast with your friends, family, anybody that you think would appreciate the podcast. And please rate it 5 stars, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. As always, work your shit out, not on other people. And thank you for listening.